You're listening to
I Don't Do Sci-Fi.
Episode 1. It Won't Be Easy.
Hello and welcome to this new podcast series, I Don't Do Sci-Fi. I'm Rebecca Ray and with me are John Isles.
Hello.
And Dani Ray.
Hi.
As I'm quite sure a few of you already know, last year we produced Tripods Cast, based on everything to do with the tripods by Sam Yude, aka John Christopher. We talked about the books, TV series, video games, comic books, and everything.
Beach towel.
And
We got to speak to the cast and,
Yeah.
and the producer Richard Bates.
Yeah.
And two of Sam Yude's children, Rose Yude and Nick Yude, who did Sile Press.
they were very supportive of us, Sale Press, Nick and Rose, which
Yeah.
I'm very sad to say, recently on the 24th of August, Rose Yude passed away
Yeah, it was
from cancer.
sad to hear that. She was always very supportive, retweeting us on Twitter.
Yes.
And she even wrote us a nice email to say how we'd done her dad proud with the Sam Yude centenary episode.
Just so sad, we've only just recently got to know her, and
She was very lovely and very kind.
Big sad loss.
Yeah.
so we thank her and Nick for the support of our previous podcast. So now I'm going to explain the premise of our new podcast. So in I Don't Do Sci-Fi, each episode we're going to be showing Dani a different classic sci-fi film or TV show. So expect a mix of the sublime to the ridiculous as we subject her to the best and the worst the genre has to offer. So as the title of the show suggests, sci-fi is not usually our thing, is it, Dani?
Nope. Don't like it. Don't interest me. Whenever something gets advertised that's sci-fi, I kind of switch off. My brain just goes,
Well, we didn't tell you that the White Mountains was sci-fi, did we?
No, no.
No,
Just in
no,
case.
you tricked me into that one.
And look what happened.
I could still argue it isn't, but could argue it's one of the first dystopian novels.
Yeah.
I know dystopian's a type of sci-fi, but it's niche enough that I can class it isn't. I'm being reluctant, and I know I'm being reluctant, but I'm not. I don't like sci-fi.
Yeah, she rolls her eyes every time I mention Star Trek and moons.
That's because you talk about it 24/7.
Well, we did always try and get at least one Star Trek reference into Tripods Cast, which didn't always make the edit.
But God, did it make me groan.
Yeah, so this podcast is kind of influenced by things like the blog Adventures with the Wife in Space by Neil and Sue Perryman, where Neil would subject his wife Sue to watching classic Doctor Who every episode in order, and she's not a fan of that kind of stuff, so just getting that raw impression rather than the same old opinions we all know. And I found that refreshing with the latest incarnation of Time Team in Doctor Who magazine, where it was young people talking about, just saying absolutely amazing things like loving Time in the Rani and going, oh, it's Mel's show. Oh God, what's going to happen to Mel? And we're all like, what? You all love Mel?
And remember the controversy of watching classic Doctor Who at 1.5 speed?
Yes.
The furore online from some fans was ridiculous.
But I really like that kind of thing, because like with Wife in Space, she would diss episodes that are fan favourites like Pyramids of Mars and then liking other ones, so it can be refreshing to hear different perspectives on something.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we'll get that with Dan.
Maybe not. We'll find out.
So before we get into discussing our chosen sci-fi, I want to introduce our guest for this episode, Gareth Preston, who is the producer of the podcast Very British Futures. So how are you doing, Gareth?
I'm doing splendidly. Thank you very much for having me along.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. What are you currently working on?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on season 2 of Very British Futures. We got 3 in the can, the first one, including Your Good Selves.
Yay!
Yeah, all about Channel 4's 2014 show, The Aliens. And it's an excellent one. I'm very much enjoying editing it. And since then, there's the 2 TV plays about the time traveller Dominic Hyde, which recorded with our friends over at the Randomizer podcast. And then just lately, John and our mutual friend Andrew, we've recorded one on the Peter Cushing BBC version of 1984.
Yeah, that was fun, if you can call totalitarian torture fun.
We go very deep. It's a deep
Ooh, I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, Andrew was trying to stoke controversy.
Oh no.
Whether it was sci-fi or not. He kept goading me, come on, let's wind Gareth up, let's argue. But hopefully Gareth kept us under control.
Yeah.
You can decide for yourself soon.
Well, we look forward to it.
Indeed.
So let's talk about the sci-fi we're introducing Dani to. It is the 1987 BBC Two series Star Cops. Created by seasoned television writer and script editor Chris Boucher, Star Cops tells the story of Nathan Spring, a British police detective living in 2027, who finds himself manoeuvred into taking command of the recently formed International Space Police Force. Spring, played by David Calder, must find a way to bring about credible policing amongst the many space stations and lunar bases that make up humanity's first steps into the high frontier, all whilst acclimatising himself to the endless hazards of surviving the space and fending off those who would see law enforcement as a threat to their interests. Star Cops had a lukewarm reception at the time, and audience viewing figures were low. A single season of 9 episodes was produced. Although forgotten by most, a cult following built around the series, impressed by its hard sci-fi storylines, unique detectives in space format, its sharp wit, and strikingly modern approach to characters and dialogue. Amazingly, Star Cops got a second lease of life in 2018 when Big Finish Productions began to release new audio adventures featuring a mix of original and new cast members. 5 box sets have been produced, with a 6th due for release in April.
So with the introductions done, we're going to travel back in time a few days and listen to some moments from Dani and Rebecca watching episodes of Star Cops. Let's hear how it went.
Hello, I'm in front of the TV with Dani and I'm about to show her an old sci-fi series she has never seen before. How are you feeling today, Dan?
Excited.
So today we're going to be watching some episodes of science fiction series Star Cops. So have you heard of this before?
Yes. That's because of you and Gareth podcast.
Ah.
Purely only those reasons. If it wasn't for Gareth's podcast, no, I would never have heard of it at all.
You didn't
ever.
actually listen to the podcast then, did you?
No.
No.
Why would I listen to a podcast about a sci-fi show I've never seen?
I listen to quite a lot of them and I haven't seen them.
It's weird.
It makes me want to watch them. Clearly I'm weird then.
Yeah.
Because Kevin feels the same as you.
Because we're right and you're wrong.
Okay, so with the name Star Cops, what do you think the show is going to be about?
Police in space. That's literally, like, you think Star Trek, you think Star Wars, Star Cops. It is police in space.
Okay, police in space.
Yeah.
It's a 1987 BBC TV series, so do you think you're going to like it? You don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to start playing it.
Sorry, was he wearing a swimming cap but his hair was all out?
Yeah.
What? What? What the fuck is the point in that?
I don't know.
What? This is the theme tune, yeah?
Yeah.
It is fucking epic.
It is great.
Oh, I fucking love it.
You love the theme tune?
I fucking love the theme tune.
Yes! Some people hate it.
Oh no, I love it. I love that it's got a proper 80s feel about it. It's like a 80s theme tune.
Early on, there's already signs Dani is enjoying the dialogue.
It was on the expensive side, but you had to be tuned to my particular brainwave pattern.
Oh, I can't see that being very expensive. The technology should be simple enough. What's it for?
It's supposed to reflect my mood.
But then come the scenes on the Charles de Gaulle with overlapping conversations.
I don't think they should use credits to design those things.
Got a funny face now.
Yes, it's just show 2 conversations at once, but over each other.
Yeah, that threw me as well first time.
Yeah, I don't think that one through did though.
I think it's to convey realism.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. You're
Nah.
trying to watch it. That just conveys confusion.
Yeah, it does.
There it goes now.
Dani starts to realise that perhaps this isn't a kid's show.
You say it's just a policeman I've been sleeping with all these years.
You thought I bought those handcuffs especially?
What time did this go out on the BBC?
8:20.
Fair dues. Just, there's been a few. Just slightly smut. Slight smut is what I would call it.
Yeah.
Slight.
I was under
The BBC budget microgravity wins some accolades.
Otherwise, you'll find the dollar.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm very impressed with the zero gravity acting.
Yeah.
I actually am impressed with it. Like, the American dude is some of the ones where, like, his legs are in weird positions, like, as if he's like, I'm trying to hold myself, in place.
Yeah.
It's quite good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I like
yeah.
it.
Can't avoid disorder.
For the rest of episode 1, Dani says little, seemingly engrossed in the storyline. Hopefully a good sign. The special effects remind Dani of one of her favourite comedy shows.
Mike?
I'm just gonna pause it really quickly. All the muzzle shots just makes me think of Red Dwarf. Yeah, and it makes sense, but
The detail on that.
yeah, I think just like the quality of how we look and stuff just make me think that it's Red Dwarf.
Mike, wake up, damn it!
Then she notices the curious use of kneeling chairs in space.
Flowering for a spaceman. You know, I really have a natural aptitude for this, don't I?
There are those weird special chairs out there, like they put you in a certain position, like you.
Are they the ones where there's a bit for the knee?
Yeah, that's what it is. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like a weird perching thing. You're kind of like sitting and kneeling at the same time. I remember my art teacher having one in secondary school. She used it for painting.
Alright.
Yeah.
There's a two-man.
Leah Jones brings Dani to a horrible realisation about herself.
C398 LR 9421.
Thank you, Lee Jones.
That's a long fucking number to remember.
For your eyes.
I'm sorry, the average Joe would never do that. Maybe a 4-digit, 6-digit at max, but it would never be something that convoluted. I have my employee number that I used to have to write on my timesheets.
Yeah.
And now that goes onto a computer system and does it for me. But I still have to know that number for one specific thing. Nobody at work knows their numbers, and they're shocked I know it. Like, no one knows their NMC PIN number. No one.
Maybe she's just one of those weird people where, when you get the randomly computer-generated password, she just keeps it. Maybe she's one of those types.
She's a weirdo.
Yeah.
Although saying that, I do know the random one for our Wi-Fi one, and it is in my head. I could just tell it you now. It's just a lot of letters. And I know my PIN number. I'm that person.
Yeah.
I'm her, but I wouldn't do
You
it.
just called her a weirdo.
I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna call her out and call myself out at the same time. Fucking hell. Oh, let's just press play.
Cell phone.
Pretend.
Cell phone.
I've never said any of that.
It is safe.
Soon, a fault is found with Nathan Spring's Zoom call etiquette.
I've assigned Davis as the investigating officer.
Is that significant?
He's one of the department's.
Is there a reason you decided to walk away from the camera, lean over and show his butt to him? He was very much like, just stick it out. Hi. It wasn't even like a place to really lean either. Like.
No.
Also with Zoom, people don't do this, do they?
No,
they
there's that.
they tend to actually watch the camera.
Yeah.
They don't wander about.
No, because you are talking to someone, and so you're seeing a picture of the other person, so you're having a conversation. And then you won't just lean on it going, here, look at my butt whilst I'm talking to you. Like, no one does that.
No, it's just Nathan Spring is showing his bum.
Yep.
Two,
You're like,
three.
Look at my bum. Yeah. Also, can I just say how fucking disgusting that house is?
I know.
It is so rank.
It does look very 80s. It looks like places I remember looking like.
You've got red, grey, right? Then you've got black, and it's not a great black, and then green. It's like, oh, absolutely horrendous. My eyes are getting assaulted.
Eventually, Dani's eyes recover enough to ponder the gun laws of 2027.
Want any non-standard information on that firm and its staff? You start with the police intelligence databank.
So in 2027, we'll all have guns. He's not a firearms copper. And also, when he was talking to the other one, the guy was like, yeah, I'm here, you're a civilian. So again, he wouldn't be allowed to have that in the country then.
I don't know, but...
I'm just saying, I want to know more about their gun laws in 2027. I want to know what made this country decide we're going to have them.
And with it being made in the 80s, naturally, a villainous punk had to show up.
Oh, you freak. Get out of here.
I've not watched it, but what in the Mad Max is he wearing?
He does look a bit, sci-fi punk stereotype. That it seems to have been a thing in the 80s, wasn't it? There was this trope that the bad guys they'd always be punks.
But now you've just made me think of Paradise Towers because of how they were dressed.
They made the same year as this.
Yes.
Intriguing.
Into episode 3 now, and Dani immediately finds a chance to show off her literary knowledge.
Oh, Rose, thou art sick. Oh, Rose, thou art sick.
It's William Blake, by the way.
Ah.
Yeah.
You know your poems.
Yeah, some knowledge there for you. Boom.
God's name's on this, Josh.
And again.
That's a collection of William Blake. Are you familiar with his work?
Yes, I am.
No, not really. With some kind of lunatic.
Then she becomes rather fixated on the computer voice commands.
I'm ready to pay to be protected. Freeze frame. You already paid to protect him.
I can't get over the fact that they predicted everyone would say freeze frame instead of pause. Notice that in the first one when it was like freeze frame, but the general public ain't saying that. The general public's saying pausing that shit.
Pause.
Easier.
Stop. However, predictions of awkward video calls prove uncannily accurate.
How does it feel to be back on Earth?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
I said, how does it feel to be back on Earth?
They totally predicted Zoom means not going right as well.
Yeah.
Love it.
Sorry, can you say that, Gay?
Oh, I love that.
He was green.
Yeah, so was vomit.
I have an update on...
Dani's literary knowledge now reaches TMI levels.
The invisible worm flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy.
Yep, the bed of Crimson Joy is her vagina. And that's why it's found the bed of Crimson Joy. There you go. It's really, really romantic poetry there for you.
And his dark secret does thy life destroy. Definitely weird.
We make it to episode 4, and Dani hasn't fallen asleep or disappeared into Reddit on her mobile. Star Cops really must be doing something right.
What the fuck?
Maybe I spoke too soon. Star Cop's vision of a virtual assistant breaks Dani.
What the actual fuck?
She looks like she's from a music video.
Fucking hell.
Of that era.
How may we help you?
Awful.
Connect me with section OMZ 13.
But for the rest of the episode, Dani says little and watches attentively. So let's get an impression of what she's made of Star Cops. So we've watched the first 4 episodes of Star Cops. What are your thoughts, Dan?
I like it. I like it a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
You actually enjoyed it?
Yeah, I'm not classing it as sci-fi. I know it's sci-fi, but I'm not classing it as sci-fi.
Oh, why is that?
Because it's totally just a police procedural murder investigation kind of, well, not murder, but police procedural, and I'm going for that. Same space. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Any other thoughts?
I like the fact that it's an international one, so they've gone and got different nationalities. I like that they've incorporated that, and I love that the Americans and the Russians are still at war with each other.
Well, I guess that's realistic.
Yep.
Would you watch any more?
Yes.
Ooh.
I want to watch the rest.
Okay, cool. That's really good.
Yeah. So, we watched, insert number here, of episodes together.
Okay.
How many episodes do you both think I watched in total?
Do we get a prize if we get the right answer?
You get
Just
the
to remind,
prize of knowing that you get it right.
just to remind listeners, there were 9 episodes of the television series.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a conservative 2
Ooh.
Is that all together?
out of the 9.
Yeah, 2. Gareth says 2.
Okay.
Now, I'm tempted to say 7 of 9, but I'm not allowed Star Trek references. So I'm going to hazard a guess at 4.
4. Very conservative numbers. I watched 4 episodes with Rebecca and Kevin.
Uh-huh.
And then went home, took the rest of it, and watched the rest of the other 5 episodes. I've watched the entire series.
Wow.
There we
Wow.
go.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you liked it?
No, she totally hated it.
Yeah, I bloody hated it, and I wanted to watch every single episode so I could
Slag it
just
off.
slag
make
it off
sure.
and just rip it to shreds. No,
No.
I bloody loved it.
Yes, you did.
I really did. Oh, superb.
Yay, I'm glad
Yeah.
you liked it. You liked it more than you expected. That's what you said to me.
Yes, I liked it more than I expected.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just thought it was going to be really cheesy and a bit shitty, to be brutally honest. But it was actually really interesting. I really enjoyed it.
So, apart from the title, how much did you know in advance?
The title.
The title.
That's it.
That's all I knew.
That's how this podcast is going to work, John.
Well, I'm delighted to hear it. I must admit, it is a show that has grown on me each time I've watched it, and watching it again for this podcast, I'm liking it even more, thinking it's lovely what we've got, but what a lost opportunity.
Yeah.
You feel there's this amazing season 2 that we didn't get to see, where they consolidated all that they learnt doing this first series.
Did you watch it on original transmission, Gareth?
I did watch it way back then. At the time, I sort of enjoyed it, but I wasn't that wowed about it. In fact, I went back, I actually did a review at the time, and I was complaining that there were too many detective cliches in it. But now I've completely gone back on that. I think the detective stuff is often very ingenious. It's a show that's full of detail. It's got Chris Boucher's love of sardonic characters. The dialogue's often quite quippy in that way that we loved on Blake 7. And watching it again, it gets deeper and richer, which is quite remarkable when you know there was such turmoil often going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, they talk about the turmoil a lot in the Cult of Star Cops, don't they?
Yes.
That came out in 2006. What were they, like, talking head programs looking at different shows like Tripods and Blake 7 and stuff, talking about
Doom Watch.
yeah, that was another one.
What's the other one? Oh, Survivors. That was it.
Yeah, another show with turmoil behind it. Although perhaps we should be a little bit careful, because actors like Fisherman do like to exaggerate a bit to make a better story. So
But the turmoil of Star Cops was partly down to the usual annual strikes of BBC technicians.
But there was turmoil before that, at least according to the Cult of Star Cops.
Oh, with Evgeny Grindev and Chris Boucher.
Not agreeing on certain decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
Like wanting to have a different title for the show because they wanted to call it High Frontier, and Boucher was like, no.
Or their first meeting, Evgeny saying, you've got to rewrite your scripts. And this is Chris Boucher, an experienced script editor now, who'd done Juliet Bravo and Bergerac.
Yeah.
It's just a bad start from the beginning. Oh, and Boucher hated the theme tune. How do we feel about the theme tune? Because I like it.
Well, what was the first thing you said when we were watching Star Cops,
dear.
Dan?
I like the theme tune. I love it.
Yep.
It's got such a great vibe to it and feeling.
Yeah, I bought the 7-inch of that recently because, I mean, Justin Hayward's a great singer, but obviously he's most well known for Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I
I
wonder
don't
if
know,
that
there's this little band called the Moody Blues. I think a few people have heard of them.
I suppose so.
But yeah, again, it grew on me. I think, at first, partly because I was a teenage sci-fi fan, I didn't like, this ballady sort of song, but it's definitely grown on me. So, Dani, what did you think of this future world that it presented?
I'll be honest, for a moment, I kind of forgot that it was meant to be futuristic because the things that he portrayed as what would be new, what he predicted, we have. So in that regard, it's very good. Like, Kevin actually had to tell me at one point when there were there's essentially a Zoom meeting going on in it, going, you didn't have that back then. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh, no, we wouldn't, would we?
Oh, that the Channel Tunnel. I think they just started building
Which I wouldn't have no idea
She
about
wouldn't
when the
know.
Channel Tunnel was, because for me, it's always existed, because
Yeah.
I'm that young. But,
Yeah, screen on.
That's it. The screen on, screen off stuff was weird.
Well, on the Kindle, to turn it off, it says screen off.
Does it?
Yeah, on my Kindle, if I want to turn it off, the options are cancel, restart, or screen off.
Of course, famously, Box does everything that our smartphones now do.
Or Alexa.
Or Alexa.
Yeah,
Smart.
of course.
Or
'cause
the other
that-
brands
yeah.
smart speakers.
Yeah, in fact, my phone sometimes tries to force something called Bixby on me, when I press something by accident, it goes to activate Bixby.
The what?
It's on Samsung
It's,
phones.
it's Samsung's version of Siri.
Yeah, and you press a button. It's got a specific button for it, but yeah, it annoys me.
I always think it's named after Bill Bixby. I don't know if it is, but...
I must say, Box has better conversational skills than what were our current crop of technology. And thank goodness it never says, "You look like you're trying to solve a crime. Is there something I can do to help?"
That's going to be in the reboot.
That'd be great.
I wonder if Box was influenced by Aurak since Belcher had worked on Blake 7.
I feel.
Or we just thought it'd be interesting to have a smart computer to help the lead character.
I think there is a bit of Aurak in Box. And
He does answer back sometimes.
Yeah, he's a bit of a smart aleck, like Aurak is. And it's a good way of getting across bits of plot in a fairly succinct way.
Yeah. So, John, how did you first encounter Star Cops?
I was 13 when it was on. I saw a bit of an episode because it was on an awful time slot on BC2, and so it kind of clashed with things. And I just remember channel hopping and coming across a scene in the Star Cops office, because I distinctly remember it's a very memorable set design, isn't it? That doorway they've got. So I remember that and thinking, this is boring. Sorry, Star Cops. And that's all I ever saw of it until I started reading about it in TV Zone in the 90s. And then saw the videos in HME one day. Out of the 3 that were available, the one called Trivial Games of Paranoid Pursuits sounded the most interesting because it was a good title. And then saw the rest when they were on UK Gold. Yes, it doesn't quite have the budget to pull off a too convincing future, and some of the Zero-G stuff doesn't quite work. But you know, it's the characters. You can believe that Nathan Spring and Farouk, Davis and Paul Kenzie are real people. You know, maybe not so much Anna Soon. You know, you can imagine meeting Davis down the pub or at work, couldn't you?
Yeah, sorry, we mentioned that Zero-G stuff. There is bits where I loved it when they're like, the background characters are just like sat in like that shuttle bus essentially, and their arms are just like floating.
Well, so Pete Conrad, the commander of Apollo 12, who visited the moon, was also visiting the set of Star Cops. He was quite impressed because they spoke to NASA when they were planning the series, so they'd get some of the technology close to what it could be. And he pointed out that the people on the shuttle bus would be, if they were asleep, their arms would be floating and the hair would be sticking up in Zero-G.
Yeah.
But never considered that, so it's quickly spiked up the extras, and it's good to know that they listened.
But what got me is when they were awake, they would have their arms like that, as if they wouldn't just pull their arms to themselves.
Whoops.
Because you would, even in Zero-G, you'd pull your arms to yourself, because you see it all the time on like the International Space Station.
Yeah, they don't go around with their arms floating, do they?
No.
I know you're not a fan of sci-fi. Are you much of a fan of detective series?
Yes. I love them. Probably why I loved this, to be fair.
Yeah, we both. We love stuff like New Tricks, don't we?
Yeah.
Shakespeare and Hathaway,
Dale and Pascoe.
Vienna Blood.
I haven't watched Vienna Blood.
You should do.
No, I haven't watched that one.
Chris Boucher says in the documentary and on the commentary on the DVD that his approach was to take the existing detective stories, even the old detective stories, and transplant them to this new environment to give it an extra level of detail. You know, he shamelessly ripped off old plots, he said, but in a new setting. You know, even as Nathan sort of saying, this isn't Sherlock Holmes, doesn't he?
And I think they are quite impressive. A lot of them are very satisfying as mysteries, I think.
Trivial Games of Paranoid Pursuits, for example.
You read my mind. Sorry. I was going to say, yes. Well, you're sort of confirming what I'm thinking, that I think the way those two investigations come together to reveal a bigger picture is very satisfying.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it from that point of view.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's probably why I enjoyed it as well, is because it felt very much as a forefront that it's a sci-fi show with crime drama thrown in. It's a crime detective genre in space.
Unfortunately, it didn't appeal to the sci-fi fans. It didn't appeal to the detective fans at the time.
Probably down to marketing, I reckon.
Well, that's true. I mean, it got a Radio Times front cover and a feature article, but like we said, it was on in a weird slot that kind of crossed over between two popular shows on BBC One at the same time.
It was up against Terry and June.
Exactly. No chance.
I've never even heard of Terry and June.
What?
Well, I found out today, apparently, if we're going to be hit by a nuclear bomb, there was always plans to put Terry and June on the telly.
Game, never heard of it.
It was
Sounds,
popular.
Very popular sitcom. This is probably for a different podcast, though, telling you about old sitcoms.
Yeah. Star Cops, it's written by people who've worked on cop shows, crime shows, and quite a few of the cast members were from that background as well. I mean, David Calder did crime shows before and after Star Cops, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's got that kind of face. He's often playing policeman of one kind or another. Yes. I mean, apart we mentioned Trivial Game. Were any particular mysteries that stick in the mind, Dani?
I really enjoyed that one with the engineer who was like from up north.
He sounded definitely from Yorkshire.
Yeah, and he was very angry at everybody. Liked him, and the fact that someone was sabotaging, and they kept saying, "Well, it's your shoddy work." And it's not my shoddy work. It was just like it's everybody else's shoddy work, and there's a saboteur.
Yeah. I love that saboteur
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was such a great episode.
That was very good. And Davis and his ex. Like, she doesn't want to see him and just end up trapped together. Oh, dear.
and I shouldn't like him as a character because,
I know.
you know, like, in today's standards, he's very chauvinistic, but
yes.
God, do I love him.
Racist,
I absolutely
sexist,
love him. I
chauvinistic.
should not, but he's got a soft part in my heart and I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know if we're jumping ahead, but, you know, they kept some elements of that for the Big Finish revival.
So...
Well, they've toned it down a little bit.
I disagree.
There's no Asian things like he says about Anna in Cold Blood.
He does. He makes comments on religions and things that are offensive. In the first season of the Big Finish audios, he is apologetic, but that really disappears, certainly, by the Mars series. And he does make comments like he thinks Hinduism and Islam are the same thing. And just assumes, two Asian women, they must be the same. Yeah. And he even makes homophobic comments as well, because he's just completely clueless.
So, I mean, that episode that you mentioned, Danny, the Other People's Secrets, is... I mean, what's impressive is that they managed to get so many suspects for who's doing the sabotage out of this fairly simple premise. I mean, it's an episode the mystery isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is sticking two people together in locked rooms, sort of like in different characters.
Nathan Spring and Pal Kenzie, for example, you know, and they really bond.
I love that episode as well. Jeffrey Bailden as...
What was his job on Moonbase? I couldn't quite work out.
He was a health and safety inspector or something.
That was it.
That's the guy who does the saboteur one.
Yeah.
He was a health and safety inspector.
So he's like inspecting his own sabotage.
The Yorkshire guy, he was very angry, saying like, well, it had to be done in front of the health and safety guy, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah.
And sadly, they didn't get to make one of the episodes because there was going to be 10 episodes and one of them was called Death on the Moon. And I think it sounded like it was really going to be good. It said this episode would have been a country house murder mystery of the sort popularised by the fiction of Agatha Christie and Cluedo, set on the moon. It would have been centred around a plan by a Chinese corporation to launch raw materials from the moon to somewhere between the moon and the Earth. Anyway, they said the Star Cops would be called in to investigate, and one of the engineers is found dead at the opening of the project. Spring assigns one Star Cop to each of the 5 possible suspects. As each suspect is killed off, Spring realises the project is a con and exposes the killer.
It was a Philip Martin script, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which he's never released. And possibly to reuse for something else in the future.
Does sound really good though. Like I think that would have been one of my favourites.
But yeah, it was the electrician strike scuppered it, and obviously Star Cops wasn't a priority production.
I was wondering, perhaps to stop this being too much of a love-in.
Yeah, but then we
talked about the zero-G sequences, Gareth.
I really enjoyed it. I can't say there was anything. I think part of me knows that you're all gonna hate me for this. You can tell it's that weird acting from the 80s that it doesn't feel natural. It feels, I don't want to say wooden because it's not wooden, but it's got that thing. And I think if it was made today, it'd feel better. And I think it might be taken better.
Well, no, both Trevor Cooper and David Calder come from a theatre background.
That's exactly how it feels. I feel very much like I'm at watching a play. That's how it felt. It's got that kind of thing, but it's that thing the 80s did. I found like watching back a lot of 80s things. You're going to find that with older as well. Yeah, it's definitely because how it's transitioned, and I'm more used to the newer style of shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be a bit jarring at times, just to get my head around again. Through was a weird character that I enjoyed liking at the beginning, and as the series went on, the more I disliked him as a character.
I've noticed him this time around. I've noticed how he's a very angry person, and I think it's because at the start of the series, he's the only one who gives a shit. Because the others, because all the Star Cops are a jerk, they're all part-timers, no one wants them there. And he seems to be doing that while trying to hold down the job, but also doing other stuff, traffic control stuff, and no one's taking it seriously and taking the piss all the time. So no wonder he's very wound up. He's so, he's completely kicking off at people like Kenzie, kicks off at Davis. He's just angry a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think there is a kind of intenseness about Farouk. And at first, it's interesting that he and Nathan don't really... The first 2 episodes, there's definitely a lot of feeling out going on between them. They're not quite comfortable with each other. They're kind of testing each other a bit to see whether they can rely on them. And then I think they make a decision that they are on the same side, and they're both certainly equally passionate about the Star Cop side of it. But I know what you mean, Dani, about the acting. It is a kind of acting. It's not over the top, but there is a kind of slightly overemphasizedness you find in a lot of science fiction. And actually, like you said, a lot of those kind of studio-bound TV of the 70s and 80s, if they were making it now, it probably would be a little bit more naturalistic.
That's the word. That's the thing. It's just that fluidity of feeling more natural.
But really, it kind of works because it's detectiveness, and we're kind of used to that kind of Agatha Christie of people coming on being a little bit arch. Sort of like in a country house and telling each other things that really they should know. Gosh, you're so good being a tennis champion, David, and all that kind of... Because detective shows, they're a real challenge to write because you've got to slide in all the clues and all this information that you sort of need without everyone turning into Basil exposition. And usually it gets away with it. You can forgive the odd clunky... Hello, I'm the president of Interstellar Tech, and I don't like my brother.
I mean, at least with this one, unlike a lot of other contemporary sci-fi shows, I guess, is that they are natural in terms of they swear a lot. And as you said, Dan, quite fruity language.
Yeah.
Smutty.
And I quite liked it. It felt natural. It felt like they were real people. And the conversations that they would have when it was just like, when they weren't interrogating anyone and they were just like in the office type thing, they felt very real kind of conversations people have in that kind of work environment.
Like Farouk and his friend playing that game of Guess the Film quote.
I'd use the word friend very loosely.
Well, colleague. Co-worker.
The guy was not nice, and if you read Chris Boucher's book, the guy is even horribler. He's a total racist.
Oh.
I do quite like the scene in Warm Blood where Davis is having to work on the exercise bike all the time to try and... Because otherwise he'll be sent back to Earth for unfitness. And I think that works. That's a nice bit of humour that runs through that episode. But it doesn't feel forced. It feels in character.
Yeah, and I like how the noise of it was irritating enough that Spring was like, will you just stop it now? I'm trying to have a conversation. Shut up.
I enjoy Nathan when he was getting wound up by all the security stuff. Was it in the second episode? Where he's just like, you could just see he's just like at the end of his tether, like, seriously, please stop. So you liked Farouk at first, because I remember after watching you said he was your favourite character, so that changed.
That definitely changed, yeah.
So who is your favourite character then by the end?
Davis, I like him. And I like Pal. I like her. I really like her.
Yeah,
I really like her. I like just her... I would never normally say this, but I like a spunky attitude. It's not a phrase I would ever use normally, but I do like that kind of...
It fits her.
She's got a bit more bite to her. Like, she's not just passive, got something about her. I also liked it in one of the episodes where Nathan's just like, you complain when I give you work, you complain when I don't give you work. And I just thought, I like that. She's a perfectly written woman. In that scenario where she's in a male-dominated job that still is male-dominated in 2027, set in the future. You know what I mean? She's still got that personality to be able to battle with them.
Yeah, that is something that's really jumped out to me. I think this viewing of it is Linda Newton playing Pal Kenzie. She is really good. You kind of think, oh, you should have gone on and done great things after this, because she takes this character who, you know, could be a mass of contradictions and be quite annoying, and makes her completely believable. And I like this kind of little game that's going on between her and Spring, especially in the early part of the series, where he really wants to get rid of her because he thinks she's still... Because at the start of it, of course...
She's dirty.
Yeah, she finds out she's a dirty cop and she's been taking bribes. And he's still got that picture of her. So he's still trying to get rid of her, and he keeps kind of testing her. But she kind of keeps getting around him in one way or another.
And I noticed she always calls him Nathan. She doesn't call him Spring, she doesn't call him Commander. It just does that to annoy him.
Yeah. Very cheeky. But I'm glad that they kind of didn't make it a romance in the end.
I thought they were building towards that.
I thought they
more.
were, and I feel like they're still implying it in the big finish.
I was going to say, if there was a series 2, I would have assumed they'd have gone down that route quite easily.
But
especially with that episode 8, where they're together.
In the
They've bonded,
Yeah.
and they've had that kind of conversation. I feel like their bond will continue to go stronger.
and the way that she reacts when she thinks he gets blown up on that ship in episode 9, it's not quite the love of my life is gone, but she's definitely devastated by it.
You get similar freakouts from her in the audio as well, in the big finish.
Oh, that's right, and because she married or lived with someone else, didn't she? And
Yeah,
so
and
she
then
lost
they
contact with Spring, and then
separated. And...
yeah, and it's like, oh, she's available.
Yeah, because she was pretending she was making out she was still with this guy, and then actually no, it turned out they broke up.
In preparation for this podcast, I've been skimming through the excellent unofficial guide to Star Cops, Above the Law, written by Paul Watts. And somebody, I think it's David Calder, makes this comment that Nathan Spring, he didn't want this romance to happen, because he felt, even though obviously they act it in this Will Won't You way, because he felt that Nathan is a very closed down character in many ways romantically. It's something that his girlfriend that he has at the start is commenting on, and that although he likes women, he's not very good at sharing himself and his feelings. He has that whole kind of copper suspiciousness about everybody.
It tends to be a trope in cop dramas, isn't it? They don't do well in marriages.
That is a classic trope. It's unusual to find a happily married policeman. There's one or two, but there's not many.
I wonder, though, with Nathan having investigated his own dad and finding out his dad was essentially dirty, would make him not be able to trust and therefore open up to people. The person who, you idolise as a child growing up is his dad, and it turns out his dad was the one doing all the things against the company that he worked for.
Yeah, selling corporate secrets.
That's it.
Doesn't he say that in some way his girlfriend being murdered was a relief?
That one doesn't really...
No, actually, it does ring a bell, but not quite worded that way.
But
I feel like it was because of the fact that it was going to be away in space. Yeah, it's like an implication that...
I've seen people in the reviews for the book say something on those lines, saying going to the Star Cops was actually good for him in a way, and he was quite secretly pleased about it because it made it easier for him in terms of the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
That does kind of make sense.
Because he could use that as an excuse more for why he didn't engage with her.
But of course, he took her death badly. He cared for her. He paid for her to have a grave in a nice cemetery.
Well, that's nice of him.
It is, isn't it?
Very nice.
Or is he still feeling bad about taking her to a really rubbish Chinese restaurant she didn't like?
Maybe.
They did look atrocious, though.
It does. That is something about the series. Whenever they go offside, it's not as nice as space. There's something.
It's extreme.
They have dated worse the scenes on Earth, I think.
But the fact that the restaurants didn't even look like restaurants, they just look like some crappy canteen that they've found in the BBC studios just to quickly film it.
Oh, that reminds me when in the first episode, Nathan, it's 2027, but it might as well be 2022 because he's working from home. he doesn't go into the office. All his computers at home, screen on and all that lot. He gets a live feed of the investigation on a big screen in his house. It really was predicting the future. Speaking of David Calder, I don't know if you've heard of the TV series Moonbase 3, BBC series from 1973, co-created by Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks, Doctor Who producer and script editor. Similar to Star Cops, it was set in a real potential future with a moon base. The main character, played by Donald Houston, was called David Calder, and David Calder played Nathan Spring in Star Cops, which also had a moon base and a realistic, no aliens, futuristic sci-fi. Now, am I just weird noticing this connection? I wanted to mention it.
Well, somebody had to.
Speaking of Moonbase, we have not yet really mentioned
Space 1999?
No, I was going to
Oh,
say the guy in charge of the Moonbase.
Alexander Krivenko, played by Jonathan Adams from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Dr. Scott. I never made
Scott.
the connection at first.
No, I didn't really think of him like that. I suppose because of the way they made him up, I was kind of thinking of him as kind of Topple. But it's a very nice kind of paternalistic performance.
I'm not quite sure of the hierarchy, because do the Star Cops work for the Space Agency / Moonbase, which Krivenko's in charge of?
I get the impression from the Big Finish audios they don't, but they have to work together
Yeah.
to ensure the smooth running of the, space community. Yeah, you're never quite sure whether he is because everyone thinks he's a Russian spy or he knows more than he lets on and stuff, and you're never quite sure, and I guess that's the thing, because we never got enough time to see the series play out, so we don't really know.
I'd definitely say he knows more than he lets on.
Yeah.
I feel like he's somebody who's got all of his fingers in all the pies and knows what's going on.
And the final member of Star Cops, the one who in many ways had it against her because she gets less chance to establish herself, is Anna Shun.
I liked her towards the end. It took her to warm up, but I suppose they all took time to warm up.
Yeah, they had the characters in
Gradually.
So it takes a while for the show to settle and, get all the gang together, so to speak, and then it's cancelled, which is so frustrating.
And I did like it in A Double Life when she and Davis go to the bad guy's hideout and they're talking as they go on. It says, I don't think I can take a human life, because of her religion being a Buddhist. But then she's forced to do that, and Davis is quite kind and sympathetic towards her after that, even though he spent the last episode or whatever talking about her behind her back,
bullying her,
and all that, and then they kind of become friends over that experience together, and then after that they get on.
I believe she was a bone of contention between Chris Boucher and the producer.
Because she wasn't one of his original characters.
Neither was Krivenko.
The producer wanted an Asian character. He felt the Asian continent should be represented in the International Space Police Force. But I believe Chris Boucher was unhappy because he said, I don't know anything about Japan or how Japanese people act and think.
With Boucher's book, didn't he update it to fit the real world because the USSR had been abolished by then?
He didn't have the rights to use Krivenko.
Oh, really? So it was updating and a rights thing as well then?
Yeah.
I like that the character was a doctor as well, because it seemed to add an extra dimension to the Star Cops lineup. And all crime shows seem to have a coroner or whatever, don't they?
Yeah,
or
a medical
CSI
person.
type person. So, and obviously she was crucial to her first episode because it was a medical crime. And even with Big Finish, they've got a medical doctor who's part of the team.
I also like the fact that they brought in another female character.
Yes.
Because I feel like it could have been very male heavy.
It was the 80s.
I know and appreciate that. But I do just feel that it helps balance out a little bit. I know it doesn't make it equal at all. But it's nice to see two different women as well. Like, they are so vastly different. Yeah. But yet they can work together, and they you can see them still having conversations, and I feel realistic conversations of two women who work together.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking. Now Krivenko is Russian. Shun is Japanese. This leads me to ask a question of Dani. Is that when it comes to international characters in the show, how do you feel they are depicted?
Very stereotypically.
Definitely.
I agree.
Bouch had his thing against Americans, didn't he? He unapologetically wrote them as cliched for Paranoid Games and Trivial
Well, they
Pursuit.
didn't. They didn't give him a good look, the Americans, in that.
No.
I mean, even calling the space station of Ronald Reagan was a dig at the Star Wars program, wasn't it?
I think it's a credit to the actors, actually, that they kind of bring some shade to fairly caricatured characters. But I'm afraid it is one of the black marks I have against Star Cops. There aren't many, but one of them is that most of its international characters are very much the stereotyped view. When we go to Italy, we meet the mafia, and they're all a bit, Japanese businessmen are sinister and inscrutable.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but it's the 80s. And I feel like it don't bother me because it's the 80s. I know what you're saying. I think if it was done today, that'd be like, oh God, no. But I can give it a pass a little bit.
You know, speaking of international characters, some of them were actually international actors. Sayonara was probably one of the only 2 Japanese actresses in the UK at the time. And then you had, in one episode, Conversation with the Dead, you had Carmen Gomez. She played a Spanish character in Doctor Who, The Two Doctors. You know, obviously David Farouk was played by a real American. And Daniel Benzali from Murder One was the American commander on Ronald Reagan. Robert Jezik, who was Canadian, played his number 2 as an American. Oh, there's an Israeli actress in A Double Life.
They did attract some very good actors to it. It was usually quite well cast.
Jeffrey Belden.
Jeffrey Belden turning up in Other People's Secrets, and it's a fun little performance from him as the health and safety guy.
The anti-health and safety guy.
We love that one.
I'll even forgive the hijackers who turn up in...
Oh, what was it? The Cult of Star Cops. Trevor Cooper calls them.
Yeah.
What was it? Extreme hairdressers.
Yeah, that's right.
They do look a bit on the fey side, considering they're supposed to be these ruthless terrorists who turn up in intelligent listening for beginners. They also suffer that they're from the Black Hand gang, who sound like they should be someone that the Famous Five are investigating.
The Black Hand Gang were also in Vienna Blood this season, coincidentally, because they were a real life gang.
Well, I've learnt something new.
I think they said they named themselves after them, didn't they?
Yeah. Do any of you own any merchandise? Or
Yes, I've got the 7-inch single of the theme tune.
can you play it on anything?
No, sadly not at present, but it's nice to look at.
Well, I've got David Bowie vinyls. People give them to me. Don't have what to play them on.
There's a lovely photo of Justin Hayward on the back. What else? Obviously, I had that one videotape. I have the DVD set, which is now out of print and ridiculously priced. I've got Above the Law, the book Gareth mentioned.
Which is also ridiculously priced right now.
Yeah, and Gareth very, very kindly bought me the first Big Finish audio box set for my birthday a few years ago, so it was good to hear them all back together. Well, the core cast.
What's left of the core cast?
What's left of the core cast, because Eric Ravens passed away in the 90s.
99.
And Anna.
Sayonara's gone. Well, we don't know where she is.
She vanished, didn't she?
Above
the Law talks about not being able to trace her.
Sounds like she probably went back to Japan, and I assume she's left acting.
I don't think she's got many acting credits.
Jonathan Adams is passed as well.
Yeah, he passed away.
Yeah, so you got David Calder, Trevor Cooper, and Linda Newton are all in the Big Finish box sets.
Although hadn't they lost contact with Linda Newton, so that's why she only cameos in the first 2 of the 4 stories, doesn't she, before
and then
to record her properly.
And then she rejoins the cast full time, because in the interviews, Trevor Cooper says someone got in touch and says, I've found Linda Newton.
Yeah, wasn't she living in the Australian outback or
something like that? The first season, she had to do it remotely. But then, Linda Newton was able to come over and record it in person.
Which, it just wouldn't be Star Cops without the 3 of them, would it?
No.
I've only heard that first season, but I was quite impressed with it. I thought it worked very well, particularly the first story. I think the first story has got the best murder mystery in it.
One of our cops is missing.
Oh, it brings back Andrew Seacombe's character from An Instinct for Murder.
Dad,
Brian.
I'd forgotten that.
Brian.
They bring back Brian.
They bring back the actor, they bring back the character. thing is, obviously, they couldn't afford the rights to the theme tune. It won't be easy, so they have a generic, acceptable theme tune instead. But apart from that, it is legitimate Star Cops.
It's just so good, and I think the Mars box sets are even better than the Mother Earth ones, and I love the Mother Earth ones.
And of course, there's 2 new characters. 3 actually. There's 2 new Star Cops: Priya Bazu, and Paul Bailey.
Yeah, and there's also Nimi March as Commander Shayla Moss, who's the new coordinator of Moonbase.
I also like that for the front cover of the first box set, the 2 new actors are wearing replica Star Cops uniforms for the publicity photos. So they're not Photoshop costumes.
So are you tempted to listen to these, Dani?
No, normally I wouldn't, because I'm not very good at listening to audios. I'm the kind of person who puts an audiobook on, does something, and then 20 minutes later goes, what's happened? Like, I've no idea. And I lose track so easily. But they do sound interesting.
They are good.
You get more Colin Davis and Paul Kenzie.
Oh, well, definitely yes, because I love them too.
The next season's called High Frontier, and it's coming out November, and then sometime in spring for the second half. All the cast members are returning. I'm not sure if it's going to be on Mars or back on Moonbase.
It's interesting, at the end of The Cult of Star Cops, David Calder answers a question, would he come back and play Nathan Spring? He said, yes, of course I would. And that was 2006. And I think, when was the first box set? Was it 2017? 18.
I'm so excited, because when Mars finished and then we had lockdown, I thought, well, that's it. So to find out that they'd announced another 2 box sets, I was absolutely thrilled. I was just like, yes, I can't wait, because I just love them.
It is very good. I've listened to them twice, and they're very true to the series. I mean, to the point where the script editor and lead writer, Andrew Smith, is a retired police officer.
Yes.
Hired because he was a script writer and wrote for Doctor Who when he was a teenager. And also he'd had this experience of being a policeman after being a writer. So it makes sense to get him.
So imagine that fed into his characterisation of Paul, who was an undercover cop, doing deep cover when we first meet him, having to live as a gangster, and once his cover's blown, he ends up joining the Star Cops. And they really do play up that Priya will know stuff, and she'll be able to explain things.
See, you need a medical character in these.
I agree, you always need the medical person in any group.
Yeah, because she's able to say, this will have an effect on that.
Yeah.
So I recommend it. I haven't listened to the audiobooks though. And
you've done a couple, haven't they?
Yeah, and they're written by Mike Tucker and narrated by Trevor Cooper.
That might be entertaining, because Mike Tucker's a reliable writer.
Have any of you read Chris Boucher's novelisation of the Star Cops show?
I always wanted to, but I was only aware of it when the fanzine version was hard to get. Obviously, it came out as an ebook, didn't it, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, all collected together.
But from reading interviews about G, it's his vision of what Star Cops should have been. Like, I know that Davis was meant to be older than Spring, and kind of a mentor relationship.
Yeah, Nathan was supposed to be like a young maverick.
Yeah, but they cast an older actor.
I'm glad they did. I think David Calder was brilliant.
He was.
I've not read it, but I'd be curious to.
Would you recommend it, Rebecca?
Not even finished the first story yet.
Okay.
It's definitely going into more depth with things, and like I said, I mean, I'm still on that first story, and they're making the traffic controller guy a total racist, because I started really thinking, I don't remember this in the episode. Was he really saying this stuff? And it's like, no, he wasn't. They just made him into a really horrible character.
So you have no sympathy for him.
I don't think you had any sympathy for him anyway.
No, I didn't like him.
Because he were a bit of a dick.
He was.
In it anyway.
No wonder Thea was so angry all the time. I would sit next to him all day. So, did your opinion about the show change, Dan, from the beginning to the end?
No. Okay. My opinion was I didn't really have an opinion of it.
You only knew the title.
I knew the title. I had my expectations going into it. They, got exceeded. And I'm quite happy that they got exceeded. And I was like, oh, actually, it's better than I thought it was going to be. But that's about as much as I can really comment for that.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed this time, rewatching it and taking notes, was that a lot of the episodes seemed to end on a joke. With characters laughing.
Yeah, in Cult of Tripods, Trevor Cooper talks about that scene. Linda Newton referred to it as, what was it, a laughing dog moment? And they were all like, what are you on about? And she says because at the end of the shows that were on in the 80s, someone would say, what do you think, Toto? And the dog would go, ruff. and everyone would laugh and the credits would roll.
But it is true. A lot. I think it was a television convention. A lot
Starsky
of
and Hutch.
Fry and
lot of
Laurie
sh-
took the piss out of it as well, where they did the freeze frame bit, but they weren't actually froze. They were just trying to stay still. You could see them wobbling eventually.
Well, yeah, Police Squad did that with it as well. But yeah, it doesn't quite fit tonally, does it? At every episode, or
It
almost.
does seem a little odd in Star Cop, which is often dealing with, murder and quite grim, and not in a larky way. It's taking itself pretty seriously, with nice bits of character humour at the end. But it did seem a little odd that we always ended on a
smile,
backslapping.
I'd like to disagree. I would like to disagree quite a lot about this. I don't think it's odd at all. I think it's quite normal. I think it's life. Yes, they've experienced and done what they've had to do, and they've done that. But when you're catching it, it's at the end of it. It's another day for them. It's just them talking to each other. It's just another conversation.
Well, in New Tricks, they'd always go for curry afterwards.
That's it. I have horrendous shifts at work, and it can be absolutely horrible in the moment. I can hand over and I can turn to the person I've worked with and we will have a laugh and a joke as we leave.
And then it cuts to the titles.
That's it. I think it's part and parcel of the human nature. It's a coping mechanism when things have happened. You don't dwell on the bad and the nasty and stuff like that. So to have those comedic moments, I think, is realistic, and I don't find it's odd at all.
That's an interesting point, then.
I can see what you mean, a sort of life goes on.
Yeah.
Sort of fashion.
I've seen some people make that complaint about Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks, saying, oh, it's set after the Dominion War and it's all jokes and stuff, and it's like, well, that happened in real life.
It is a comedy, though.
Well, after World War One and the Spanish flu, people weren't moping around depressed. Everyone went crazy, didn't they, with jazz and the flappers and stuff. Everyone went wild.
Oh, did you mention when Davis tells Spring to sod off, and he goes... Remember who you're speaking to? He goes, oh, sod off, sir.
Yeah.
That's just brilliant. And there's no recriminations because they've got that kind of level of banter going. That's just a nice, realistic touch.
I really like that bit.
Yeah, there's a similar bit in the audio drama where Davies says, with respect, sir, and Nathan's like, with respect, anytime anyone says that, it's usually not with respect, also don't say it.
He says that in the show. Not fully that, but the first half of that, where someone says, when someone says with respect, they never mean with respect.
It was interesting listening to the interviews for the Big Finish box sets, because the amount of actors who were guesting in these episodes saying they never watched it before, but to prepare for to appear in it, they decided to do research and watch it, and they're like, wow, this is a really good show.
I remember Helen Golding says that on the season 1 box set. She directed them, didn't she?
Yeah.
In some ways, is this even more obscure than Tripods?
Well, I don't think I'd know anyone who's... Well, actually, I don't know anyone who's heard Tripods either, to be honest. Outside us.
Yeah.
It might be obscure because it's BBC Two.
It's BBC Two, and unfortunately it's scheduled badly against more popular programmes on other channels.
That Dani's never heard of.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's even more obscure than the popular shows. All the popular shows are obscure.
They're all obscure
They're
to
all
me.
obscure.
On that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. So in conclusion, Dan, what did you think of Star Cops?
I'm sad that they didn't make a series 2. I want them to remake it and make it modern. That sounds nasty. That sounds really mean. That I'm like, make it modern. But I want them to make it modern, alright? I want to make it in 2022.
Well, the Big Finish audios are modern, so
Yeah.
So if you can,
I don't know. It's so good. Like I actually said to my mum, because she loves crime dramas. I even said to her, I said, it's really daft. I think you'd like it. She will not watch it, I know that much. But I did say to her she would like it from the crime drama alone.
Yes. And this is the thing, people like Mum and I think like you wouldn't give it a chance because you think you just see moon-based stuff and go, ugh, I'm not watching that.
for a while it was on BritBox, the UK streaming service.
And who has that?
And well, I have it. A lot of people were suddenly going, oh, Star Cops, I've heard of that, it's meant to be good. And for a while it was trending on Twitter.
Oh, good.
Because obviously with the DVDs being like 80 quid or more, people were going, oh, let's watch this, and it's really good, it lives up to its reputation. So hopefully maybe the Tripods may turn up on there one day.
I doubt it. I feel that's a licensing issue.
Yeah.
But that's by the by.
Yes, it's a shame Star Cops was just treated so badly by the BBC. With Tripods, it just felt like they just didn't understand what they had at the time.
No, and it was voted one of the best sci-fi shows ever by a group of writers in SFX magazine of the mid 2000s.
It's topped in other polls as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, Tony Pratchett said it's one of the best British sci-fi series he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's because it didn't feel like sci-fi was thrown to the centre. I didn't feel like it was getting pushed into me. Like, I'm not a sci-fi fan, so I like the fact that I didn't feel at times that it was sci-fi-y.
Yeah.
I felt like it was very nicely under the radar.
Yeah.
And that you had the crime bit first and foremost.
It's crime in space.
Yeah,
Like the kidnapping is embryos rather than children.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that kind of aspect. The
Yeah.
fact that it wasn't so sci-fi that I'd be like, oh god,
No.
what's this?
But I think the way it's promoted and marketed probably doesn't help, and I think it does put off people, like you said with Mum, but because they see all the grey moon stuff and the spacesuits and people floating zero G, they're like, oh no, I'm not interested.
I agree.
So I was wondering, how many Danis are you going to give Star Cops?
On a scale of 0 to 5 Danis, 0 being diabolically shite and 5 being excellent, I'm actually going to give this a 5.
Ooh.
There you go.
Start on a high.
That's it. Everything else has to now compete with this. So if I get given absolute diabolical shite, we know where that's going.
I don't think we're doing Kinvig, are we?
Someone lent us Kinvig. Who lent us Kinvig?
I lent you
lent us
Kinvig.
Kinvig. Listening to Tim, it sounded like absolute like waterboarding.
Well, you have the advantage you can stop after one.
So the date is the 11th of December, 2022, and we've just found out the sad news that Chris Boucher, the creator of Star Cops and script editor of Blake 7, has passed away. Gareth Preston has just gate crashed our recording of the Blake 7 episode. Gareth, any thoughts on Chris Boucher?
Well, this is very sad news. Chris Boucher was a marvellous writer. I think particularly for his dialogue, he was really great at coming up with these great piffy lines that you remember from his Doctor Who days in The Image of Fendal, with lines like, "You must think my head zips up the back," is a very memorable one. He was perfect for Blake 7, a perfect marriage for Terry Nation's skill at plotting and storytelling. But Chris Boucher was so good at putting in those memorable character lines. I particularly like in the episode Star 1 when Avon says that the reason he's going to come on this suicidal mission is that I want to be free of him. Speaking about Blake, which I think is one of my favourite lines from Blake 7.
So joining us today for our recording of episode 3 is Will Hadcroft. Will, have you any thoughts on Chris Boucher?
Yeah, very much a hero, really, a writing hero. I remember being first conscious of his name when the Doctor Who story, The Robots of Death, was released on VHS. So I remember The Robots of Death from when I was 7, when it was broadcast, but obviously didn't know the names of the writers then. So when it came out on VHS, I was really looking forward to it, and then you connect the name. Chris Boucher wrote this. I was very struck by The Robots of Death, seeing it again all those years later. And as Gareth talked about the dialogue, something that I picked up on was there were lots of sort of throwaway lines in that story, The Robots of Death, where the characters would refer to the founding families and these kind of backstory things that aren't essential to telling the story, but they fill in background and give you an idea of the world that these people come from. And it's just one line of dialogue. And he does that with a few things throughout that story and the other scripts that he penned. And then, of course, when the Blake 7s started to be issued on VHS, I realised that this Chris Boucher was involved in a lot of things that I loved as a boy. And I admire him now as a writer.
I think Chris will also be remembered as the grumpy old man of sci-fi. I don't know if he described himself as that, but he's always known for his sort of dour expression and way of speaking at conventions and in interviews, and obviously was very proud of his work, Blake 7 of Star Cops and Doctor Who, of course. Just to follow what Gareth and Will said, The Robots of Death is one of the most well-regarded stories of that era, and that was a story that stuck in my head really, really well. And of course, as Gareth said, a lot of Avon's dialogue was Chris Boucher. Tenacious stories and plotting, but Chris Boucher was the one that gave it the dialogue polish. And so we should remember Chris for that. And coming up with melding those ideas of detective fiction and science fiction that hadn't reached the mainstream. I can only really think of the film Outland with Sean Connery or the Isaac Asimov book Caves of Steel. So yeah, R.I.P. Chris.
We hope you enjoyed this first episode of I Don't Do Sci-Fi. Do let us know what you thought. Our social media contact details will be at the end of the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Gareth.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it a lot, and I'm delighted you like Star Cops, Dani.
I do.
So join us next time on I Don't Do Sci-Fi when we're going to be watching some future sports with Rollerball and Death Race 2000. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to I Don't Do Sci-Fi. If you'd like to contact us or comment on the show, email us at idon'tdosci-fi@gmail.com, Twitter at I Don't Do Sci-Fi, on Instagram, I Don't Do Sci-Fi, or on Facebook, I Don't Do Sci-Fi. I Don't Do Sci-Fi was presented by John Isles, Dani Ray and Rebecca Ray, and featuring our guest, Gareth Preston. The theme tune was composed by Steve Johnson, and the podcast was directed and produced by Kevin Hiley.
Joining us for this episode is Gareth Preston from Podcast.
That's a different series, isn't it?
Podcast.
You know what? Well, you know what?
No, we're not doing a podcast.
Here comes Bodcast.
You know, if no one's done it already, that name is just there for the taking, isn't it?
I don't know if you've heard of Bod.
I don't know how many episodes you get out of it, but Bodcast, you know.
It's waiting to be made.
What about Podcast? I love Pob. Cast.
Cast.
Cast. Yep, that's another follow-up we could do as well.